America has become completely unaffordable, and I don't know why more people are not talking about this.
Let me summarize for you just how unaffordable it's become for the average American to buy a house in the United States.
The housing market has become so unaffordable for most Americans over the past 4 years, and I want to show you what happened.
Nobody can afford a home right now. Housing affordability is at its lowest levels in history, 3 times worse than it was during the Great Financial Crisis.
I will never be able to afford a house.
The American dream had a house in it, a white picket fence, a 2-car garage, a backyard where your kids could grow up. That was the promise. Work hard, save up, buy your home. Simple, attainable, American. But somewhere between that promise and today, someone changed the rules, and they didn't tell you. Today, a median price home in America costs over $400,000. Mortgage rates have doubled in 3 years. Rent is swallowing half of most paychecks. And the generation that was told homeownership was the foundation of a stable life is living in their car, their parents' basement, or a studio apartment they can barely afford. This isn't bad luck. This isn't inflation. This isn't just the market. This is a system built by the wealthy, protected by politicians, and marketed to you as opportunity that has quietly made sure the people who already own property keep getting richer, while everyone else keeps getting priced out. The American dream didn't die. It was sold, and you weren't the buyer.
Let me summarize for you just how unaffordable it's become for the average American to buy a house in the United States. The average household income in the United States is $80,000 a year, and a financial advisor recommends that you spend only 25% of your after-tax income on your housing budget. Your after-tax income, if you make $80,000 a year, is $60,000. And if you were to take 25% of that on a monthly basis standpoint, your monthly mortgage payment should be no more than $1,250 per month. A $1,250 per month mortgage budget only affords you a $175,000 home. But the average home price here in America is $420,000. So the average household in America can only afford a $175,000 home, but the average home price is $420,000. That, simply put, is the entire issue that Americans are dealing with right now. Do not let anybody ever tell you that right now is the right time to buy. The right time to buy a house is when you can afford it, and that's it. And if you can't afford it, that's totally fine. Renting is okay. I'm a realtor saying that. Way too many realtors out there are trying to tell you that right now is the right time to buy. It is a realtor's job to help you buy or sell your house when you decide it's the right time. But it is not a realtor's job to tell you when that right time is.
You want to know why millennials are so poor? Why we can't afford houses? It's because of all the fucking destination weddings we're making each other go to. It's not the boomers' fault, dude. It's fully our fault. Like, I could have put a down payment on a very nice 2-bedroom house in Bozeman, Montana for the amount of money I've spent on bachelor parties and weddings alone the past 2 years. The worst part is, it's never like an easy place to get to. The wedding is always in a ranch, on an airship docked at the top of the Nepalese mountain. I swear to God, the next day the date is going to say, please join us on our dream wedding in 1905 Tsarist Russia. Use code LOVE for 5% off the time traveling ticket. Like, get the fuck.
Nobody can afford a home right now. Housing affordability is at its lowest levels in history, 3 times worse than it was during the Great Financial Crisis. There's a lot of different reasons for this. There's the Fed hiking rates, there's lack of supply, NIMBYism, but there's also the financial aspect of owning homes. Incomes are being eaten away by inflation. Home prices skyrocketed during 2020 because people were like, we're going to move into a home. Also, mortgage rates were 3% during that time, meaning you could just get a bunch of home for not that much financing. But now the final aspect of financializing a home, mortgage rates are skyrocketing because the Fed is raising rates. Mortgage rates have hit almost 7%. Previously, you were able to get a $432,000 house with a $1,600 monthly mortgage. Now you can only get a $267,000 house because mortgage rates are so high. We're in this weird spot where supply is constrained. Homeowners don't want to list their homes. Home builders can't really build homes because we have labor shortages. Home prices are falling, but they're falling from 124 straight months of home price growth. So it's a storm of people can't afford homes because mortgage rates are so high, because the Fed is raising rates, but also we have huge supply constraints, whether that be from people just being like, I'm not going to list my home, or because we just don't have the proper infrastructure in place to help build new homes.
Can you afford a house going into 2023? I just saw numbers that blew my mind. Half of Americans can't afford a home priced at $250,000. That's 250 grand. And half of the households in the United States can't afford to buy something at that price. And I don't know if you've checked lately, but there are 0 houses for sale at $250,000. But things are even more depressing if you unpack those numbers, because 39 million households in the United States couldn't afford a home if it was priced at $150,000. 25.8% of Americans can't afford a home priced at $250,000, meaning half of the country has been priced out of home ownership. And this has all really happened in the last 4 or 5 years. It's a clear sign of how badly the middle class in the United States is being hollowed out. And it's heartbreaking because the United States is no longer the place that anyone can come to build a nice little life for themselves. The nice house, white picket fence, a couple of kids, a car, and a fluffy little furball in the front yard, that dream is dead. And it's crazy to think that that was once possible in this country on a single income. Mom stayed at home vacuuming the carpet wearing pearls and a sundress. This is something tangible that a lot of people are trying to articulate, but the way that I would put it is our country is moving towards this new type of entrepreneurial driven feudalism, where it's still a great place to live with lots of opportunity if you're trying to build a scalable business. But if you just want to work a job that ends at 5 p.m., raise a family, own a home, and have some hobbies and free time and vacations every now and then, now everybody that understands the picture has either given up or they're in this rat race to escape the middle class before it evaporates completely. It's really this scramble up this deteriorating ladder to try to make it into the upper class that controls the capital and the labor, before the ladder that's crumbling before our very eyes disappears entirely. So today it's housing that over half of Americans can't afford, but tomorrow it's going to be cars, children, fur babies, and before you know it, you won't own anything, and they'll tell you that you're happier for it. You'll be living in a literal episode of Black Mirror. I don't know what the answer to this is, but I would love to ask TikTok, what's the solution here? Is there no solution? Is the solution simply escaping the middle class? Can the system be saved, and how do we do that? Or does it even matter because we're edging towards World War III and thermonuclear war?
America has become completely unaffordable, and I don't know why more people are not talking about this. Half of America doesn't even have a savings, rent is insane, healthcare is a luxury, and somehow the narrative is still people are just bad with money. Like, what money? People are working full-time. Most people have 2 to 3 jobs anymore because you have to. At what point do we stop blaming the people and just accept the fact that the cost of living has simply just outpaced reality? Because everything is this expensive, you have to know exactly where all of your money is going anymore. Like, a budget is just simply a necessity. You have to have one. Started using a budgeting app like mine to figure out where all of my money is going, but it does not make up for the fact that America is too expensive to live in anymore. If you're struggling, you are not alone.
Let's start with facts, because the facts alone are damning enough. In 1980, the average American home cost around $47,000. The average annual income was roughly $19,000. That means a home costs about 2.5 years of salary. Today, the median home price sits above $400,000. The median household income, around $56,000. That's not 2.5 years of salary anymore. That's 7 years. Before interest, before taxes, before insurance, before the roof decides to cave in at the worst possible moment. And mortgage rates, they nearly double between 2021 and 2023, jumping from historic lows of around 3% to over 7%. That single shift added hundreds of dollars per month to the average mortgage payment overnight. So yes, mathematically, statistically, and by every measurable standard, housing in America is more unaffordable today than it has been in modern history. This isn't a feeling, this is arithmetic. Nobody woke up one morning and accidentally made housing unaffordable. This was a slow, deliberate, and extremely profitable process. Let's break it down. First, the 2008 crash changed everything. After the housing market collapsed, millions of foreclosed homes flooded the market. Normal buyers should have scooped them up. Instead, Congress and the Federal Reserve pumped trillions into the financial system, and who had the cash and credit to buy at the bottom? Not you, not your family. Institutional investors and private equity firms. Companies like BlackRock, Invitation Homes, and dozens of others bought tens of thousands of single-family homes, not to live in them, but to rent them out at maximum profit. In some neighborhoods, corporations now own 1 in every 5 homes. Think about that. The house you want to buy is owned by a hedge fund, and that hedge fund answers to shareholders, not to you, not to your community, and certainly not to the concept of affordable living. Second, zoning laws are frozen in 1950. Most American cities are dominated by single-family zoning, laws that literally make it illegal to build anything other than a standalone house on most residential land. No apartments, no duplexes, no affordable multifamily housing. Why? Because existing homeowners who vote in high numbers and lobby aggressively don't want new housing near them. More supply means lower prices. Lower prices mean their investment is worth less. So they block it, zone against it, and call it protecting the neighborhood character. Translation: protecting their property values at the expense of everyone who doesn't own yet. Third, interest rates played a cruel joke. From 2010 to 2021, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates near zero to stimulate the economy. Home prices exploded because cheap money was everywhere. Then inflation hit, the Fed panicked, and rates were hiked aggressively, killing affordability from the other direction. The people who bought homes during the low-rate era are now locked in, refusing to sell because selling means giving up their 3% mortgage for a 7% one. This created a supply freeze. Fewer homes on the market, same number of desperate buyers, prices stay artificially high. A perfect storm. Except it wasn't a storm, it was a policy.
I love my house. I'm going to start off by saying that. I love this house. When I was home shopping back in 2021, I chose this house on purpose. The only way I can describe it to people was that it's a house full of love, and you could feel it when you walked in the door. As soon as I walked in the front door of this house, I knew this was my house. I knew it. It sounds completely insane, but maybe you understand that when I walked in, I knew it was mine. And I do love this house. I love everything about this house. But I've come to the realization that I can't stay here because I can't afford to. And it's not that I can't afford the house payment. It's because there's so much wrong. I got a home inspection that wasn't worth the paper it was written on. And if you look back in my TikToks, I've done videos about the multiple things wrong at this house before. It has just been one thing after another, and the list of things that I have to fix is tens of thousands of dollars long. And me as a single person with one income, I can't afford to do all of this on my own. And it makes me really sad because when I bought this house, this was supposed to be my forever home. This was supposed to be my, I'm going to be here until I die or go to the nursing home. And I can't afford to stay here. I don't even know what to advise people. Like, people ask me, what do you recommend for people buying their first house? I have no idea because I also have friends who bought brand new homes that have issues. The one thing I would say is to just be financially and mentally prepared for the fact that owning a home can completely financially ruin you. And that's where I'm at today. This house has quite literally bankrupted me. And I'm devastated because I love this house. But unless I win the lotto or marry a rich husband, there's no way I can possibly fix all the things wrong here. So anyway, that's all I got. Happy holidays.
The housing market has become so unaffordable for most Americans over the past 4 years, and I want to show you what happened. In February of 2020, the average house in this country was $275,000. If you put a 10% down payment and got a 3.52% interest rate, your principal and interest was $1,114 plus $500 for property tax and insurance, puts your payment out the door at $1,614. The average American only needed about $50,000 in a salary with very little debt to qualify for the average home in America. That was awesome, the American dream. Now in February of 2022, the average home went up to about $350, 10% down, but the interest rates were still 3.73%. So principal and interest was $1,455 plus about $600 for property tax and homeowner insurance. Put your payment out the door at $2,055. So you needed about $65,000 in a salary with very little debt to qualify. Still very doable. Now let's fast forward to current day, February 2024. Home prices have shot up to $415,000, 10% down payment. Interest rates are 6.75%, $2,423 principal and interest, $700 for property tax and homeowners insurance. Now you're looking at $3,123. So now you need about $95,000 to qualify if you have very little debt. So if you look at the down payments over the year, it's gone up only about $14,000, $15,000, which is a lot, but also doable in 4 years. But what really pinched Americans is how many individuals went from $50,000 to almost $100,000 in salary in just 4 years. That's why so many Americans can't afford a home right now.
I went down a rabbit hole because I checked Facebook, and now I know why you and I are never going to own a house. So why every person who's been trying to buy a house has been outbid by like $100,000, if not more, above asking price. And yeah, it's also racist. 15% of the homes sold last year were not sold to people trying to buy a house, but they were sold to private corporations and people buying their second and third houses. And this happens most in southern cities and way more in predominantly black neighborhoods. 1 in every 4 houses in Atlanta. 24% of the homes sold in Miami. 1 in 4. And look where. You can see the concentration. Charlotte, North Carolina. 25%. Insane. 1 in 5 in Phoenix. And this is actually how I figured this out, because a girl that I know that I used to work with bought her 3rd rental property there. There were cities where it was lower, but even within that, you can see this trend. Chicago is the most segregated city in America, and the majority of homes that were purchased by investors are in the predominantly black area of the city. 15% nationwide, 30% in black neighborhoods. This is past late stage capitalism. This is feudalism.
America has become completely unaffordable, and I don't know why more people are not talking about this. Half of America doesn't even have a savings, rent is insane, healthcare is a luxury, and somehow the narrative is still people are just bad with money. Like, what money? People are working full-time. Most people have 2 to 3 jobs anymore because you have to. At what point do we stop blaming the people and just accept the fact that the cost of living has simply just outpaced reality? Because everything is this expensive, you have to know exactly where all of your money is going anymore. Like, a budget is just simply a necessity. You have to have one. Started using a budgeting app like mine to figure out where all of my money is going, but it does not make up for the fact that America is too expensive to live in anymore. If you're struggling, you are not alone.
You are correct. Millennials and Gen Z are not out buying starter homes. You're 1000% correct. Older generations, specifically boomers. I'm seeing a lot of those in the comment sections. You are 100% correct. The first homes that we went out and bought or are currently buying, they are not starter homes. And so you're getting in the comment section going, well, the reason that your mortgage is so high and the reason that you feel like none of this is affordable is because you're living above your means. You didn't buy a starter home. You didn't buy a starter home. Thank you, Susan. We're aware that we're not buying starter homes. Mostly, and let's see if you guys can grasp this information, we're not buying starter homes because we're not just starting out. A lot of us are 40 and can't afford a home. The reason that we're buying houses that are like 2-3 bedrooms, 2-bath homes is because by the time that we can afford to buy our first home, which should be a starter home, by the time we're able to actually afford that first home, we're 40. And a lot of us have kids and or pets and or an elderly parent that we might need to help take care of someday. So we might actually need more space because it isn't our starter home. We're not starting out. We've been going for a couple decades. That's why. So I know it's incredibly frustrating to older generations to see younger generations on this app going, my mortgage is $4,000, but their mortgage is $4,000, and not because they're living in a mansion, but because they bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch. And it was $500,000. And this is something, honestly, boomers, that you guys should be thinking about more. Because a lot of you are going to want to sell your home soon. You're going to want to downsize. Your kids don't live with you. And you're going to want to downsize. You're getting older, right? Well, your house is worth about $1 million now, right? Guess who can't buy it from you? Millennials, Gen Z, no one can buy that fucking house. No one. So you guys are sitting there on your high horses going, well, we bought this house in the early 90s and our mortgage payment was only a couple $100 and the house is paid off and now it's worth $1 million. Yeah, you won't sell it for $1 million though. Watch, find out. The housing market's shit and young people can't afford anything and you guys don't seem to give a shit about that. So you're correct. When we're on this app and we're going, oh my God, our mortgage payments are going up by $500. They are going up by $500, and not because we're living above our means, but because this is the only life we've ever known. And boomers, I get it, okay? You're just living the life that you were told to live. Your guys' parents advised you guys on growing up, possibly getting higher education. That would guarantee you a better job. You'd be able to save up. You should buy a starter home. Then you build on that starter home and you buy a bigger home and your wealth just keeps growing. We were told the same thing. Guess what? It didn't work out for our generation. I have a higher education. I got married and then I had kids. I did everything in the society order that I was supposed to do it in. And guess what? The house I currently live in that I purchased in 2019, if I had to buy it today, I wouldn't be able to afford it. Isn't that fucking insane? Isn't it insane that I bought a house 6 years ago that if I bought it today, it's now tripled in value and I wouldn't be able to afford it? And I know that if I tried to sell it for triple the value, no one would buy it. And I'd have to end up lowering the price on it substantially to get someone to buy it because no one can afford it. So while you're in our comment sections going, well, the problem is, no, we're done hearing about what you think the problem is. We're all 40 and we know, and we're adults too. Please stop talking to us like we're 16. Oh, okay, well, I feel better now.
Listen to me. I will never be able to afford a house. I will never be able to afford a house.
Home prices are rising nationwide as inflation remains stubborn and mortgage rates remain high as Americans compete for fewer available homes. Home prices in March were up 0.4% compared to February. Now that's the second month in a row that we have seen gains.
My parents' house that is $195,000 back in '96 is now worth like $500,000 to $700,000. My children will never be able to have the life I live because I can't afford to do it.
I don't think any of us thought when we were growing up that owning a home would be a luxury. Like maybe we thought it would be a bit difficult, but not like a luxury that basically only the rich will be able to afford.
No one that works a full-time job should be facing homelessness. And that's what my family is facing right now.
Being completely radicalized by the rental housing market right now, I cannot believe that you can pay over $300 in non-refundable fees just to apply for an apartment.
A big part of the reason why social life here in America is getting more and more difficult has to do with the fact that nobody can afford decent housing.
Everybody in America kind of knows, like, it's over. Like, there will be no recovery. Like, this is not like the other times. This ain't like 2008 where, oh, we'll crash and then we'll get back up.
Because right now, this economy, this world is set up to make average American families fail.
And I'm appalled that our particular kind of capitalism not only fails to deal with the housing problem, but somehow routinizes it so that the homelessness is blamed on the homeless, blaming the victim kind of, because I can see why a society does it, because if you're such a failure at providing this basic human need, you better blame somebody, because otherwise you risk blaming yourself.
If I can get my hands on a nice lump sum of money, baby, I'm buying land in another country and I'm out of here because there's nothing left here but struggle.
Ah yes, the American housing market in 2024. Truly a masterpiece of economic design. You spent 4 years in college, took on $50,000 in student debt, got a good job paying $55,000 a year. And now you're told that with discipline and sacrifice, you too could afford a modest 3-bedroom home. In 2047, assuming interest rates drop, your landlord doesn't raise rent again, and you stop buying avocado toast immediately. Meanwhile, a private equity firm with $80 billion in assets bought 3,000 homes last quarter. But sure, it's your coffee habit that's the problem. The advice from older generations is particularly special. We just saved up and bought a house. Yes, in 1987 for $90,000 on one income. Thank you for that incredibly relevant financial wisdom. And let's not forget the politicians, bless their hearts, who own an average of 3 properties each, standing at podiums explaining that the housing crisis is complex and will take time to solve. It's complex, all right. Complex in the way that any problem becomes complex when the people solving it personally benefit from it remaining unsolved. Let's be honest about who this crisis is crushing the hardest. Millennials and Gen Z are the most locked out generations in modern history. Millennials, now in their 30s, have a homeownership rate dramatically lower than boomers had at the same age. They entered the workforce during a recession, paid off student loans through a pandemic, and are now trying to buy homes in the most expensive market in a generation. The system didn't just move the goalposts, it picked them up and threw them into the ocean. Working class and middle income Americans are being pushed further and further from city centers where jobs exist. Long commutes, higher transportation costs, worse schools, fewer services. The geography of poverty is expanding. Renters, nearly 44 million American households, are trapped in a cycle where rent increases outpace wages, savings are impossible, and the path to ownership keeps getting longer. Many are one job loss or medical bill away from housing instability, and communities of color, who were historically redlined out of homeownership for decades, are facing a new wave of exclusion. The wealth building tool that was denied to their grandparents is now being priced out of reach for them too. Solutions exist. They're not secret, they're not complicated, they're just politically inconvenient. Build more housing aggressively everywhere, reform zoning laws to allow density, and single-family only zoning in major cities. Fast-track permits for affordable developments. More supply means lower prices. Basic economics, if anyone in power actually wanted to apply it. Tax vacant and investor-owned properties. If a corporation owns 2,000 homes and leaves 200 of them vacant to manipulate rental prices, tax them into the ground for it. Housing is shelter, not a financial instrument. Regulate institutional investors. Several states have already proposed legislation limiting how many single-family homes corporations can own. It's common sense policy. Predictably, it faces enormous lobbying resistance from the very firms that benefit from the status quo. Invest in public and social housing. America essentially dismantled its public housing infrastructure over decades. Countries like Austria and Singapore have shown that well-funded, well-managed public housing works. America chose not to fund it. That was a choice, not an inevitability. The fixes are there. The will is not, because the people who would need to implement these fixes are largely the same people sitting on real estate portfolios that benefit from doing nothing.
My mortgage on my starter home is $4,845 every single month here in Columbus, Ohio. And one of the things that I think is so frustrating for me is when I talk to people who bought homes in 2015, 2014, or people who are older than me, I'm 28, or people who are in their late 30s, early 40s. And it's just you guys really don't understand how unaffordable housing has become. My house years before I bought it was a $300,000 house, and it still is a $300,000 house because there were no updates made to the home whatsoever. It had all of the original things in it, and it was so outdated. And it's just one of the things that I feel is really frustrating for me to look around and see. I have an income where my base salary is well over $300,000 annually, and still having a $5,000 mortgage every single month is insane. It is so much freaking money. I don't know how people my age, I don't know how this generation is going to be able to save, because childcare and food and gas and everything and electricity, everything is so expensive right now. So how are you even supposed to save to get the down payment? But even if you get the down payment, how who can afford these mortgage prices? I understand that I am in a unique position, but that's not the norm. How are normal American families able to afford housing. Like, how something has to change. And it's one of the things that I think about constantly, and it really stresses me out. It stresses me out for my friends, it stresses me out for my children. It's just so sad, because being able to afford a home and be a homeowner and like start a family and do all of that and have your own space is so important. It's a part of the American dream, and it's quickly becoming a thing of the past. Everyone is going to be stuck renting if things don't fix.
I need to have a vent session for a second about the state of affairs in this country. So I have 2 adult children. One is 18 going on 19 and the other one is 21. My 18-year-old is working currently as an HVAC apprentice and working on getting certified, but he's making $16 an hour, which I live in a like small to mid-sized Missouri town, so that's pretty typical around here. Wages are, low compared to a lot of places, but so is the cost of living. But he would also not like to be living at home with mom forever. He's more of like an independent, autonomous person, so apartment living is not for him at all. He wants a place where he can have his truck and his dirt bikes and be able to work on motors and have the freedom to do what he wants with the place and also be able to have all of his stuff. And at this point, honestly, renting a house would cost more than a mortgage payment anyway, but he's been looking for houses and just trying to figure out what he can afford and what he can do. And like, he found this place that was only $125,000, which is like dirt cheap around here. Like, that just doesn't exist anymore, but it had no basement. It was on like a slab foundation, I think, and probably needed some work, which he is naturally talented at that stuff. Like, he works in HVAC, he's very mechanically inclined, like he can do this stuff, so he's not afraid of a fixer-upper. Found out that the main reason it was priced so cheap is because it was in a flood zone, so it was a no anyway. But keep in mind, $125,000 house in this economy, and when we looked up to see like if he did like a 5% down payment on this thing with, your insurance and PMI and taxes and everything, his payment would still be $1,100 a month for a like cheap piece of crap house. And just the look of absolute dread on his face when he realized how completely unaffordable and unattainable it is for him to be able to buy a house and live on his own. Now, my oldest son just turned 21. He's been waiting to turn 21 because he wants to get into the cannabis industry. And it's just like the alcohol industry, where if you want to be like a brewer or a bartender, you have to be 21 in order to do it. So this past week, Thursday, he interviewed for a job with a grower. And just a couple of days ago, he was offered the position and officially accepted it. And in that time, less than a week, we decided to start a war with Iran. And so when he interviewed for the job, gas prices were around $2.50 a gallon where I'm at, and now they are already at $3 a gallon and climbing. So just in the time between when he interviewed for this job and when he accepted this job, gas prices have gone up 50 cents a gallon, and they're not done climbing yet. And this is an issue because this job, there's a lot of dispensaries here in town where if he had, ended up there, he'd probably be a little bit better off. But this was the job opening that was available at the time for him to get into the industry. And it is a farm, which is 30 miles up the interstate from where we live. So now he is going to be driving one way to work 30 miles at a time when gas prices are going through the roof, because we decided it was a good idea to start a completely unwarranted, unjustified, and unnecessary war with Iran. And I'm now sitting here thinking about my own situation, where my own currently hourly wage is, and considering if I was their age, if I was just starting out. So thinking about buying the same house that I live in right now at its current value, at current interest rates, with the same % down payment that I paid for this house back in 2017. And I realized that my payment would be double what it currently is. And I, as a 40-year-old woman who has been working for 24 years of my life, could not afford this place on my own. Like, at 40 years old, I would need a roommate in order to live in this very modest, like 1,300 square foot, 1968 ranch style home. Like, it's not a fancy house by any stretch. It's what most people would consider to be essentially a starter home by today's standards. And I could not afford it on my own on my current wages. So my question is, how the hell are we expecting these young kids to do it? Like, for someone to start out, even in my area, in like rural Missouri, they would have to make $30 an hour in order to be earning a living wage, in order to live on their own and support themselves without the help of a spouse or a roommate, just for a single person to live and make it on their own, to be able to afford a vehicle payment, vehicle insurance, a mortgage or rent payment, and all of the utilities and groceries and cell phone bills and stuff that go along with just living your life. That's no fun stuff. It's just to live. They would need to make $30 an hour. Meanwhile, we have a government that is more interested in starting wars and harassing other countries and harassing immigrants that are living in this country than they are with their own people, than they are with helping the working class in any way, shape, or form with any kind of meaningful legislation or reform. We have a do-nothing Congress that is sitting on their hands and doing absolutely nothing to help any of the working class people. I'm mad about it for myself, but I'm even more mad about it for my children. Something needs to change. Something's got to give. And frankly, at the midterms, like, it would be great if the Democrats are able to take over, because at least they'll do something to stop the nonsense that is happening in the executive branch that is going on unchecked. But are they going to do anything to actually help the working class people? At the end of the day, even the Democrats are doing the absolute bare minimum to be able to claim that they are for the working class, because they, right along with the Republicans, are taking money from wealthy campaign donors, and any policy, any legislation that they pass ultimately is going to help them and not us. So where does this end? How far does this go before we, the people, cannot afford to live no matter what age we are?
The housing crisis in America is not an accident, a mystery, or an act of God. It is the predictable outcome of decades of policy decisions. Decisions that prioritize investors over inhabitants, profits over people, and the comfort of the already wealthy over the aspirations of everyone else. The American dream told you that if you worked hard enough, you could own a piece of this country. What it didn't tell you is that while you were working, someone was buying up all the pieces. You're not failing to afford a home because you're not trying hard enough. You're failing to afford a home because the game was rigged before you sat down at the table, and until Americans, renters, and struggling buyers alike demand structural change loudly enough to drown out the lobbyists, the landlords, and the legislators who profit from inaction, the dream of homeownership will remain exactly that, a dream.